The journey from Water 7 to Enies lobby and back provides a lot of high points for One Piece, such as Nico Robin's character arc, the excellent handling of thrill and suspense leading into the CP9 reveal, or the fracturing and mending of the Straw Hat Pirates' bonds, along with them evolving from a band of friends to a more structured crew. So much has already been said of it that most deep dives would be just parroting what others have already said. There is one aspect not given enough attention despite how important it is to the arc, in the usage of willpower. This is a crucial aspect to the overarching series, with how Haki has become the arguable most important factor in most fights in the New World, for better or worse, and has grown in the heat of battle. When acknowledging one alternate meaning of the word Haki, it can otherwise be read as those whose willpower grows in battle are most likely to win. It's with this that willpower is made an observable part of One Piece's power system, which makes cases of its use more justifiable than if it was little more than resolve. Though an element of plot convenience being made a defined force of a story doesn't always alleviate its damage to the writing quality, and even One Piece can't avoid more bad uses of willpower overcoming all in later points, it is for the most part handled consistently in willpower or Haki being cultivated further through characters having an epiphany or mental growth. An early display of this I've lampshaded a few times is Zoro's fight against Das Bones, in which it's through his acknowledgement of having to keep his crew safe despite otherwise not desiring a cause to be placed in fighting someone beyond typical Bushido, causes Zoro to have the clarity to protect or cut what he wants when hearing the breath of objects around him, which is clearly an awakening of Kenbunshoku Haki, even if neither Zoro nor the audience realized it at this point. In other words, enlightenment or clarity towards one's goal in the face of adversity aids in one's willpower or the growth of their innate Haki, even if not at the level of efficiently using the three forms. It's with this that we move on to the arc's main display of growth in battle, with the power-ups each of the monster trio gain. At first glance, they can seem to be contrived and come out of nowhere, except Diable Jambe, at least, which is more of a hyperbolized form of friction, but both Luffy's gears and Zoro's Ashura also line up with displays of what even at this point can be considered Haki growth, through motivation and clarity. The obvious comparison is the Straw Hats fight in CP9 at Iceberg's mansion, compared to how Luffy and Zoro fare against Lucci, Bluno, and Kaku, even without their new techniques, with the former being a fight where the Straw Hats are disturbed by Robin's actions, fracturing after Usopp leaving, and Rokushiki being techniques unlike what they've faced before, whereas they are clear on their motivation and Robin's intent, along with more prepared for CP9's techniques during the Enies lobby rematch, or Luffy going from trapped between buildings to pushing them apart quickly when made aware of Robin's intent. Although the extremity of this change is a bit much, it isn't as though this alone is what caused the Straw Hats' will to be strengthened to the extent of being rewarded with new powers. Take that when Luffy uses Gear Second for the first time, Bluno compares him to a steam engine, alluding to the Puffin Tom acting as an inspiration, combined with the incredible versatility of Luffy's Devil Fruit. In terms of it being earned, there's both Luffy and Zoro being prepared for death when on the Rocket Man, as well as opposing the world government directly being a strengthening of their will, rather than a return to the standard, when they had otherwise ran from fights with allies of the government such as the Marines beforehand. It also can't be overstated the importance Rokushiki played in the development of the gears, with Zoro becoming the natural part of Gear 2nd, or Gear 3rd seeming to be created as a direct counter to Tekai. This is important when considering some aspects of Rokushiki that can be seen as a precursor to mastery of Haki, such as the Rokuogan being used in the same way as Busoshoku emission. This makes Rokushiki users a perfect opponent from which to bring out power-ups birthed from the will and desire to move beyond the current situation. It is also quite telling in retrospect how important CP9 were in developing these techniques, with Lucci's comment about Zoan users with the journey to Enies lobby being a mental and survival training for Luffy. Zoro's awakening of Ashura is arguably the most built up of the three. One overlooked important addition during the Davy Back fight is Zoro's Mutoryu, or no sword style, bringing the idea of a sword not making a strong swordsman alone to an even more blatant degree, in it being apparent he can utilize the same kinetic or spiritual pressure he'd displayed on Skypiea, without the use of a sword, and this is shown to have grown when arriving at Enies lobby, with his Santoryu coming to display a demonic aura around it. These ties to his Skypiea arc techniques are no coincidence, when the introduction of various levels of the Pounder Hall that tie into Buddhist symbolism and ideals. The same can be said of Sanzen Sekai, but he didn't use it successfully until fighting Oars. This not only makes Ashura a worthy evolution in the fighting style of a character steeped in Buddhist symbolism and ideals, but its awakening at Enies lobby was the perfect spot, with the world government being both in this arc and in the wider story going forward being shown as false gods, with Zoro embodying the traits of a being who opposes the gods in Buddha-Hindu teachings, fitting very well, as does Sanji's Diable Jambe, or Devil Leg, not to be confused with Deviled X. But there's unfortunately far less to say about Sanji's power-up. The last display of willpower overcoming limits is in Luffy getting back up to defeat Lucci. Though very standard in premise for a shonen action story, its execution is better than most, with how the catalyst of it links into the central idea of the Straw Hats' growth in clarity of their motivation and strength. After having been one of the key breaks in the Straw Hats' cohesion as a crew, to resolving himself to assist in saving a friend, just like the rest, and being reminded of his need to do what he can that the other crew members cannot by Sanji. Usopp plays his role as Luffy's best friend, encouraging him to get back up, but in a manner befitting the conflict between them. The events in Water 7 may have convinced Usopp on his need to improve, and bring out resentment at the gap between he and Luffy ever widening, but it's when seeing the man he considered insurmountable down for the count, and being unable to perform his duty of defeating the main enemy, that Usopp does what he can to emotionally support Luffy on the way to victory, and have him embody what Usopp believes him to be, in a manner that brings many of the ideas from Water 7 full circle. On its own, the scene is standard shonen fare, but the wider context around it makes it a scene that few other works of the same demographic can come close to doing to the same level. It's through these elements that the power-ups at Enies lobby tie into the increase in not just the willpower of the Straw Hat Pirates, but the clarity of it, in the events there having them move beyond fractured bonds and elements of immaturity to come out of it stronger as a group physically and mentally, against foes that were group in name only, and displays that, though the Water 7 arc isn't without flaws, what it does right is done excellently. Obviously, the next video will focus on Thriller Bark, with a broader overview of it rather than a condensed topic. There was another Water 7 centric topic that I had in mind though, so if interested in me analysing the use of masks in the narrative, be sure to tell me.